Hey, reality seekers! Before we dive into the mind-bending mysteries of the fifth dimension, I need to ask you something crucial. Have you ever felt like you were being watched by something you couldn't see? Ever experienced shadows moving in your peripheral vision with no explanation? Have you ever had that eerie sensation that someone was standing right behind you, only to turn around and find absolutely nothing there? Drop a comment if you've had these experiences, because what I'm about to reveal might explain everything that's been happening to you. And here's the thing, if this video gets 15,000 likes, I'll create a follow-up exploring the sixth and seventh dimensions, and trust me, what I'll reveal about those realms will completely shatter your understanding of reality. So smash that like button right now, hit subscribe with notifications on, because the journey we're about to take together will change how you see the world forever. The question that haunts physicists today isn't just about what exists beyond our reality. It's about who might be watching us from dimensions we can't even perceive, and whether they've been influencing our lives in ways we never imagined. File number 90 has been accessed. Classification beyond top secret. What if everything you think you know about reality is just a shadow cast by something infinitely more complex? What if beings from higher dimensions are observing us right now, moving through spaces we can't even imagine, manipulating events in ways that defy our understanding of physics? What if the very fabric of existence extends far beyond the 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time that we experience every day? The universe we inhabit consists of 4 dimensions that we can perceive, 3 spatial dimensions of length, width, and height, plus the 4th dimension of time. But cutting-edge physics suggests this is just the beginning of a far more complex reality. String theories, which represent our most advanced understanding of fundamental physics, require extra dimensions of space-time for their mathematical consistency. In bosonic string theory, space-time must be 26-dimensional, while in superstring theory, it must be 10-dimensional for the mathematics to work correctly. These aren't just abstract mathematical curiosities. They represent the actual structure of reality at its deepest level. To understand the mind-bending implications of the 5th dimension, we must first grasp how dimensional reality works by examining each level of existence step by step. Imagine a one-dimensional world, a simple line extending infinitely in just one direction, forward and backward along a single pathway. This isn't just a mathematical abstraction, it's a complete universe with its own laws and limitations. Any beings living in this world could only move forward or backward along this line. They couldn't pass by each other, couldn't step around obstacles, couldn't even understand the concept of sideways, because it simply doesn't exist in their reality. It's a prison of limitation, but to them, it would be the entirety of existence. Now picture 2 beings trapped on this line, separated by some distance. They can see each other as points of light or darkness ahead or behind them, but they can never meet, never interact beyond this single pathway. If they tried to approach each other, one would have to turn around and retreat for the other to advance. They're forever locked in a cosmic dance of approach and retreat, never able to truly connect. But here's where it gets incredibly interesting. If you, as a 3-dimensional being, were to observe them, you could see their entire world simultaneously. You could reach in from a direction they can't perceive, from what we call sideways, and move them around like pieces on a game board. To them, you'd be completely invisible, godlike in your capabilities, able to perform what they would consider impossible miracles. Think about this deeply for a moment. These one-dimensional beings would have their own physics, their own understanding of how their universe works. They might develop theories about forces that can mysteriously move objects from nowhere, unable to comprehend that these forces are coming from dimensions they can't perceive. They might attribute these phenomena to supernatural causes, never realizing that beings from higher dimensions are simply reaching into their world from directions that don't exist in their reality. The second dimension adds width to length, creating a flat plane like an infinite sheet of paper stretching in all directions. Beings in this reality would be completely flat, like living drawings or shadows. They could move forward, backward, left, and right, but never up or down, because those directions simply don't exist in their world. They couldn't even look up to see you watching them, because up is not a concept that has any meaning in their two-dimensional existence. Their entire universe would be like the surface of a table, with no thickness, no height, no depth beyond the flat plane they inhabit. But we can see them perfectly from our three-dimensional perspective. We can observe their entire flat universe from above, watching every aspect of their lives simultaneously. We could see inside their flat houses, observe their flat thoughts made manifest as patterns in their flat brains, witness their flat emotions as they play out across their two-dimensional existence. If we wanted to communicate with them, we'd have to project our three-dimensional selves down into their two-dimensional world, essentially creating a shadow or cross-section of ourselves that they could perceive. When you place your hand on a table and cast a shadow, you're essentially doing what a higher dimensional being would have to do to interact with us. Imagine how terrifying this would be for these two-dimensional beings. Suddenly, a mysterious shape appears in their world, the shadow of your hand, moving around without any visible source. To them, it would be a paranormal phenomenon, a supernatural occurrence with no rational explanation within their understanding of physics. The shadow could appear and disappear at will, change shape in impossible ways, and move through their world in patterns that defy their two-dimensional logic. Some of these flat beings might worship these shadows as gods, while others might fear them as demons or evil spirits. Our three-dimensional world adds height to length and width, creating the complex, voluminous reality we know and experience every day. We can move in all three spatial directions, creating the rich, textured universe of matter and energy that surrounds us. We live in a world of depth and substance, where objects have volume, where we can look up at stars and down at the ground, where we can move around obstacles and hide behind walls. This three-dimensional reality allows for the complexity of life as we know it. The intricate folding of proteins, the three-dimensional structure of DNA, the complex architecture of our brains with their billions of interconnected neurons. But then comes the fourth dimension. Time, the dimension that Einstein showed us, is inextricably woven together with the three dimensions of space into a single fabric called space-time. Such a dimension was proposed independently by physicists Oscar Klein and Theodore Kaluza in the 1920s, who were inspired by Einstein's theory of gravity, which showed that mass-warped four-dimensional space-time. Einstein revealed that space and time are not separate, absolute entities as Newton believed, but are relative and interconnected aspects of a single continuum. Events can only be properly described when we include not just where they happen in space, but when they happen in time. This fourth dimension of time behaves differently from the three spatial dimensions. While we can move freely back and forth, left and right, up and down through space, we seem to be trapped moving forward through time at a constant rate of 1 second per second. We can remember the past, but not the future. We can influence the future, but not the past. Time appears to have an arrow, always pointing from past toward future, never allowing us to reverse course or speed up our journey through this temporal dimension. But what Einstein discovered through his theories of relativity is that this apparent fixity of time is an illusion created by our limited perspective. Time can slow down or speed up depending on how fast you're moving or how strong the gravitational field is around you. Astronauts orbiting Earth age slightly slower than people on the surface. Clocks run slower in stronger gravitational fields. Time itself is flexible, malleable, and relative to the observer. Now we reach the fifth dimension, a realm that exists beyond our perception, but may be more real and more influential than anything we can see, touch, or measure with our current instruments. A five-dimensional space is a mathematical and physical concept referring to a space that has five independent dimensions, extending the familiar three spatial dimensions plus time by introducing an additional degree of freedom that operates completely outside our normal experience. The fifth dimension comes in two theoretical forms that physicists and consciousness researchers have identified: the physical fifth dimension and the spiritual or consciousness-based fifth dimension. Both have profound implications for understanding reality and our place within it. The physical fifth dimension represents another spatial direction, completely perpendicular to all our known dimensions. Klein came up with the revolutionary idea that the fifth dimension could be invisible to the human eye because it is minuscule and curls up on itself like a pill bug rolls up when threatened. This curling up, called compactification, means that the fifth dimension exists at every point in our three-dimensional space, but it's so small that we can't detect it with our current technology. Imagine an ant walking on a garden hose. From far away, the hose looks one-dimensional, just a line. But up close, the ant can walk around the circumference of the hose, exploring that hidden circular dimension. The fifth dimension might be curled up in a similar way at every point in space, too small for us to detect but mathematically essential for the universe to function. Beings existing in this physical fifth dimension would have capabilities that seem completely supernatural and impossible to us three-dimensional creatures. They could observe our entire three-dimensional space simultaneously, just as we can see a two-dimensional drawing completely by looking at it from above. They could move through our reality in ways that appear to violate the laws of physics, appearing and disappearing at will, passing through solid walls, manipulating objects from directions we can't perceive or defend against. Think about this carefully and let it really sink in. If fifth-dimensional beings exist, they could be watching you right now as you listen to this. They could see inside your body, observing the flow of blood through your veins, the electrical patterns in your brain, the hidden thoughts and emotions that you believe are private. They could see inside your home, regardless of walls or doors, or any physical barriers that seem impenetrable to us. They could observe your past and future simultaneously, watching your entire life as a single, extended object in space-time. They could move objects in our world by approaching from directions we can't perceive, reaching into our reality from angles that simply don't exist in our three-dimensional understanding. The implications are staggering. Every private moment you've ever had might have been witnessed. Every secret you've ever kept might be completely visible to these higher dimensional observers. Every plan you've ever made might be known in advance. This isn't science fiction or paranoid fantasy. It's the logical conclusion of what higher dimensional existence would mean based on our current understanding of physics and mathematics. The spiritual fifth dimension represents something even more profound. A level of consciousness beyond our normal awareness, a state of being that transcends the limitations of physical matter and linear time. In this realm, concepts like love, unity, compassion, and pure knowledge exist not as abstract ideas, but as tangible, interactive realities. This dimension is characterized by the complete absence of fear, separation, judgment, or limitation. Time and space become fluid concepts that consciousness can navigate freely, like a bird soaring through an unlimited sky. Communication in the spiritual fifth dimension happens through direct thought transmission rather than words, sounds, or physical gestures. Imagine being able to share your deepest feelings, your most complex ideas, your entire understanding of a concept instantly with another consciousness, without the limitations and misunderstandings that plague our verbal and written communications. There's no suffering in this realm, no pain, no sense of separation from other beings or from the universe itself. Everything exists in a state of perfect harmony and understanding. Those who claim to have experienced the spiritual fifth dimension describe it as a place where all questions have answers, where all knowledge is accessible, where the meaning and purpose of existence becomes crystal clear. There's no need for struggle or competition, because abundance is infinite, and every consciousness can have everything it needs or desires without taking anything away from others. It's a realm of pure creativity, where thoughts instantly become reality, where the boundaries between self and universe dissolve completely. Here's where physics gets truly mind-bending and starts to sound like science fiction. But remember, this is all based on rigorous mathematical analysis and experimental evidence. In the fifth dimension, time travel becomes not just theoretically possible, but potentially routine. Einstein's equations show us that as objects approach the speed of light, time slows down relative to stationary observers. At light speed, time stops completely. But what happens if something could move faster than light? According to the mathematics, time would go negative, meaning backward time travel becomes possible. This isn't just speculation, it's what the equations tell us must happen if faster-than-light travel is possible. Wormhole metrics describe the space-time geometry of theoretical shortcuts through the fabric of space and time, and under the right conditions, one could theoretically use a wormhole to cut travel time, not just between distant locations, but between different moments in time. Because wormholes represent shortcuts through space-time itself, they could function as time machines, allowing travel both into the future and back into the past. Black holes might provide the key to accessing these higher dimensional realms and time travel capabilities. Their immense gravitational fields warp space-time so severely that they create conditions unlike anything else in the universe. The mathematics suggests that black holes could create shortcuts through higher dimensions, essentially punching holes in the fabric of space-time that connect distant regions of the universe or even different moments in time. Theoretically, particle physicists could link different corners of the universe through these higher dimensional shortcuts, making instantaneous travel across cosmic distances possible. Imagine beings in the fifth dimension observing our past, present, and future simultaneously, like we might watch a movie where we can see the beginning, middle, and end all at once. They would see your birth, your childhood, your current moment, listening to this video, your future experiences, and even your death as a single, extended object existing across all of time. They could potentially interact with any point in your personal timeline, influencing events in your past that create effects in your present, or planting seeds in your present that will bloom in your future. This raises profound questions about free will and determinism. If higher dimensional beings can see our entire timeline, do we really make choices, or are we following a predetermined path? Are the decisions we think we're making freely actually the result of influences from higher dimensions that we can't perceive? When we have sudden insights, brilliant ideas that seem to come from nowhere, or intuitive knowledge about things we've never studied, could these be downloads of information from fifth-dimensional sources? Throughout history, humans have reported experiences that might be explained by contact with higher dimensional beings. These encounters often share similar characteristics that become much more understandable when viewed through the lens of dimensional physics. Sudden shadows appearing and disappearing without any visible source casting them. Objects moving without apparent physical cause, seemingly pushed or pulled by invisible forces. the persistent feeling of being watched when completely alone, as if unseen eyes are observing every move. Prophetic dreams that come true with startling accuracy, as if the dreamer somehow accessed information about future events. Some people report encounters with beings of light that appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly, often during moments of crisis or deep spiritual seeking. These beings are frequently described as emanating profound love and wisdom, communicating through telepathy rather than speech, and possessing knowledge about the person's life that should be impossible for a stranger to know. Could these be fifth-dimensional entities briefly manifesting in our three-dimensional space, much like we might stick our finger through the surface of a two-dimensional pond? Religious and spiritual traditions throughout the world have described similar encounters for millennia. Angels, spirits, guides, and divine messengers all share characteristics that align perfectly with what we would expect from beings capable of moving through higher dimensions. They appear and disappear at will. They possess supernatural knowledge. They can influence physical events through seemingly impossible means, and they exist in a realm beyond our normal perception while still being able to interact with our world when necessary. The phenomenon of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random, might also be evidence of higher dimensional influence. When events align in ways that seem orchestrated by some invisible intelligence, when you think of someone just before they call, when you desperately need something and it appears in your life at exactly the right moment, these could be examples of fifth-dimensional beings manipulating events across time and space to create outcomes that serve some higher purpose. Some individuals report entering altered states of consciousness where they seem to access fifth-dimensional awareness directly. These experiences often occur during deep meditation, near-death experiences, profound spiritual practices, or sometimes spontaneously during moments of crisis or deep emotional opening. People who have these experiences describe feeling connected to all things, experiencing time as non-linear, receiving knowledge they never learned through conventional means, and understanding concepts that normally would require years of study. During these states, they often report needing dramatically less food, as if they're being nourished by energy sources beyond physical nutrition. They feel disoriented in normal space, as if their consciousness is partially existing in dimensions beyond the physical. They hear sounds that seem to come from somewhere else entirely, not from any direction in three-dimensional space, but from dimensional angles that don't exist in our normal reality. Some describe hearing celestial music, voices of wisdom, or harmonics that seem to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of the universe itself. These individuals often return from such experiences with dramatically expanded psychic abilities. They may develop telepathic capabilities, precognitive awareness, or the ability to influence physical events through focused intention. They might begin receiving information about people they've never met, having visions of future events, or gaining instant understanding of complex subjects they've never studied. This suggests that consciousness itself might be a fifth-dimensional phenomenon that occasionally breaks free from its three-dimensional limitations. The mathematics supporting higher dimensions isn't science fiction or New Age fantasy. It's cutting-edge physics being explored at the world's most prestigious universities and research institutions. With further mathematical insight, scientists have discovered that the extra 6 spatial dimensions needed in string theory must be wrapped up in particular configurations known as Calabi-Yau manifolds. These incredibly complex geometric structures describe how the hidden dimensions are folded and curled at every point in space. The mathematics is so precise and self-consistent that many physicists believe these extra dimensions must exist, even though we can't detect them directly yet. Scientists have conducted numerous experiments proving time dilation, confirming that time really does behave as Einstein predicted. Atomic clocks flown on high-speed aircraft run measurably slower than identical clocks on the ground. GPS satellites must constantly adjust their clocks to account for time dilation effects, or they would become useless within hours. Particles in accelerators live longer than they should when moving at near-light speeds, their internal clocks slowed by relativistic effects. If we could somehow achieve faster-than-light travel, the mathematics suggests we could indeed arrive at our destination before we left, effectively traveling backward in time. The Large Hadron Collider and other particle accelerators have been searching for evidence of extra dimensions by looking for particles that disappear from our three-dimensional space, presumably escaping into higher dimensions. While we haven't found definitive proof yet, the experiments have placed important constraints on the size and nature of any extra dimensions that might exist. Some theories suggest that if we could create sufficiently powerful particle collisions, we might actually open temporary doorways to higher dimensions, allowing brief glimpses into these hidden realms. If the fifth dimension exists as physics suggests, it revolutionizes everything we think we know about life, death, consciousness, and reality itself. Death might not be an ending, but simply a transition to a higher dimensional state of existence. What we call dying might be like a two-dimensional being suddenly gaining the ability to perceive the third dimension. Not a termination of existence, but an expansion into broader realms of reality that were always there, but previously inaccessible. The universe might be absolutely teeming with intelligence operating in higher dimensions, invisible to us, but actively involved in the unfolding of cosmic evolution. These beings might be the architects of physical laws, the designers of natural constants, the invisible hands guiding the development of consciousness throughout the cosmos. What we consider miraculous interventions, spontaneous healings, or divine inspiration might be routine interactions from beings operating in fifth-dimensional reality. The boundaries between science and spirituality completely blur when we consider fifth-dimensional reality seriously. Perhaps ancient religious texts describing angels, spirits, and divine beings were primitive attempts to describe encounters with higher dimensional entities using the limited vocabulary and conceptual frameworks available at the time. Maybe psychic phenomena like telepathy, remote viewing, precognition, and psychokinesis are natural results of consciousness occasionally accessing fifth-dimensional capabilities that transcend our normal three-dimensional limitations. Some physicists and consciousness researchers theorize that consciousness itself might be fundamentally a fifth-dimensional phenomenon that somehow interfaces with three-dimensional brains to create our experience of being aware, thinking, feeling beings. This would explain why consciousness seems to transcend physical matter, why it can influence quantum systems through observation, why it appears to exist independently of brain activity in cases of near-death experiences, and why it possesses capabilities like creativity, intuition, and inspiration that seem to emerge from beyond the purely physical realm. If consciousness is indeed fifth-dimensional, then every human being already has access to these higher realms, but most of us have simply forgotten how to navigate them consciously. Meditation, prayer, psychedelic experiences, and other consciousness-altering practices might be methods of temporarily expanding our awareness into fifth-dimensional space, allowing us to perceive reality from higher dimensional perspectives that reveal truths hidden from our normal three-dimensional viewpoint. Living in a fifth-dimensional universe changes everything about how we view our place in the cosmos and our relationships with each other. We're not isolated biological accidents randomly evolved on a lonely planet in an indifferent universe. Instead, We're integral parts of a vast, interconnected, multidimensional web of consciousness and intelligence that extends far beyond what our senses can detect. Every thought we think, every emotion we feel, every action we take ripples through dimensions we can't perceive, influencing realities we can't imagine. The implications stretch into every aspect of human existence in ways that are both thrilling and terrifying. Free will versus determinism takes on entirely new meaning if beings in the fifth dimension can observe our complete timelines and potentially influence events across past, present, and future. Privacy becomes a meaningless concept if higher dimensional entities can observe us from directions we can't perceive, seeing not just our actions, but our thoughts, emotions, and the deepest secrets we believe are hidden even from ourselves. Death loses its ultimate finality if consciousness continues existing in dimensions beyond the physical, potentially maintaining its essential identity while gaining access to vastly expanded capabilities and awareness. The grief we feel when loved ones die might be like the sorrow of a two-dimensional being who can no longer see a friend who has moved into the third dimension. The separation is real from our limited perspective, but the departed one hasn't ceased to exist, merely gained access to realms of reality we can't yet perceive. Relationships between people become far more complex and meaningful if we're all interconnected through higher dimensional aspects of consciousness that transcend physical separation. The love we feel for others might be recognition of connections that exist in dimensions beyond space and time, bonds that persist across lifetimes and different states of being. The conflicts and misunderstandings that plague human relationships might result from our limited three-dimensional perspectives that prevent us from seeing the higher dimensional unity that connects all consciousness. Education and learning could be revolutionized if we discovered methods for directly accessing fifth-dimensional sources of knowledge. Instead of slowly accumulating information through books, lectures, and experimentation, we might learn to download understanding directly from higher dimensional repositories of wisdom. Creativity and innovation could explode if artists, inventors, and scientists learned to consciously tap into fifth-dimensional inspiration rather than waiting for random moments of insight. Yet this also raises profound ethical questions. If higher dimensional beings exist and are observing us, what are their intentions? Are they benevolent guardians guiding our evolution, neutral observers studying our development, or something else entirely? Do they have the right to influence our lives without our conscious consent? Should we be trying to contact them, hide from them, or simply accept their presence as part of the natural order of a multidimensional universe? The search for evidence of extra dimensions continues at research institutions around the world, using increasingly sophisticated methods and technologies. Scientists conduct experiments with particle accelerators, searching for signatures of particles escaping into higher dimensions. They use astronomical observations to look for gravitational effects that might indicate the presence of extra-dimensional structures. They develop increasingly complex mathematical models that could reveal the hidden architecture of higher dimensional reality. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding whether we truly live in a higher dimensional universe populated by forms of intelligence we can barely imagine. Advances in quantum physics reveal phenomena that seem to operate outside normal spatial and temporal limitations, suggesting that reality at its most fundamental level transcends our three-dimensional experience. Studies of consciousness uncover capabilities that appear impossible from a purely materialist perspective, hinting that awareness itself might operate according to higher dimensional principles. The development of artificial intelligence and advanced computing might eventually provide tools sophisticated enough to model and explore higher dimensional spaces that are currently beyond human comprehension. Virtual reality technology could allow us to experience simulated higher dimensional environments, giving us intuitive understanding of how beings might exist and operate in realms beyond our normal perception. But perhaps the most important frontier in exploring fifth-dimensional reality lies not in external technology, but in the development of human consciousness itself. Ancient wisdom traditions, modern meditation practices, and cutting-edge consciousness research all suggest that the human mind possesses latent capabilities for perceiving beyond three-dimensional limitations. By learning to expand our awareness, quiet our mental chatter, and open ourselves to broader realities, we might discover that the tools for exploring higher dimensions have been within us all along. The question isn't really whether the fifth dimension exists. The mathematics virtually guarantees that reality extends far beyond our current perception. The real questions are whether we'll develop the courage to explore these realms, the wisdom to understand what we discover there, and the compassion to use any new capabilities we might gain for the benefit of all consciousness, not just our own limited perspectives. As we stand on the threshold of potentially revolutionary discoveries about the nature of reality itself, we must remember that with expanded awareness comes expanded responsibility. If we are indeed connected to higher dimensional realms populated by advanced intelligences, then every step we take toward understanding these realities also brings us closer to joining the community of beings who operate consciously across multiple dimensions. Until then, we remain somewhat like the two-dimensional beings on their flat paper world, occasionally glimpsing shadows and disturbances that hint at realities beyond our comprehension. But now we know those shadows might be cast by forms of intelligence as far beyond us as we are beyond the simplest microorganisms, beings who move through dimensions we can't imagine, who perceive reality in ways that would seem godlike to our limited understanding. The universe is infinitely stranger, more wonderful, and more populated than we ever dared imagine. Somewhere, in dimensions we can't see, intelligence might be watching, waiting, and perhaps occasionally reaching across the dimensional divide to touch our world in ways we're only beginning to understand. And perhaps, if we're brave enough to expand our consciousness and open our minds to impossible possibilities, we might eventually learn to reach back. So here's what I want to know from you, and I really want you to think about this deeply. After learning about the fifth dimension and the possibility that beings from higher realms might be observing and influencing our reality, how do you view those unexplained experiences in your life? That shadow you saw moving without a source, that feeling of invisible eyes watching you when you were completely alone, those dreams that felt more real than waking reality, those moments of perfect synchronicity that seemed orchestrated by some invisible intelligence. Have you ever felt a presence that you couldn't see but somehow knew was there? Have you ever received knowledge or insights that seemed to come from beyond your normal thinking mind? Have you ever experienced time in a non-linear way, or felt connected to something vast and loving that exists beyond physical reality? Drop your stories in the comments below, because I read every single one, and your experiences might hold crucial clues to understanding these hidden dimensions and how they interface with our everyday reality. Don't be afraid to share something that others might think is weird or impossible. In a universe of infinite dimensions, the impossible is just another perspective waiting to be understood. If this exploration of fifth-dimensional reality has opened your mind to possibilities you'd never considered before, if it's made you question everything you thought you knew about the nature of existence itself, then smash that like button right now to help the algorithm show this video to others who are ready for these mind-expanding revelations. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because next week we're diving even deeper into the cosmic mystery. I'm going to reveal the scientific evidence for parallel universes and how they might be bleeding into our reality right now. affecting your life in ways you never suspected. Trust me, what I'll share will make today's discussion seem like just the beginning of an infinite rabbit hole of cosmic truth. And remember, in a universe of infinite dimensions, you're experiencing just one infinitesimal slice of an unimaginably vast cosmic reality. You are far more than you know, connected to intelligences and realms of existence that stretch beyond your wildest dreams. Keep questioning everything, keep exploring the impossible, and keep your consciousness open to realities that transcend every limitation you've been taught to accept. Because in the fifth dimension, every limitation is just another boundary waiting to be transcended, and you might be far more capable of transcending them than you ever dared imagine.